Hi, this is Jeff, and one of these videos specifically on, this time on missionaries. And a lot has come up in the last weeks about the topic of sending out missionaries or not, especially from the Ebola contamination that's happened in Africa, and basically bringing people back. So missionaries back and the expenses of that, and they should have known what they were getting into, and why do we have to bring them back? Why does it pay for taxpayers' money, for paying for medical care, all that kind of thing. So should we send missionaries or not? And that's a big question here. And go see my other video about full-time ministry, part-time ministry, volunteer ministry. I've talked about that separately. I don't want to repeat that here. Usually this question comes up mainly with long-term missions. I'll make a separate video about short-term missionaries and their efficiency and all that. Go watch that separately. Okay? But mainly here, let's talk about full-time missions here. And a lot of it comes down to reading the different forum areas, discussions about why do we waste money, Western countries, why do we waste money on sending missionaries to poor countries, the bottom of the billionth, and we have enough problems in our own home country, home missions, poor, lowly educated. Why do we send people to go off to other countries? Well, if we look at this from the point of view of armchair Christians or couch Christians, okay, couch potatoes, that's very unfortunate, because if we look at this, let's look at it from a historical point of view. The Roman Catholics put into place all what we understand as charitable work. The school systems, the hospitals, taking care of the poor. We need to be thankful for the last 1,500 years of experience that has allowed us to show how people have taken care of others. And there's a number of that. And now we call that humanitarian relief. Okay, so charitable contributions, charities and all that. Humanitarian relief, it's a part of that. And so that's just from a historical point of view. Let's look at it from a biblical point of view. There are two verses, if you look on them. Well, actually 6 verses, 5 to 7 verses, depending on the version in English. You can look in different languages too. If you look up the word religion and look up the word religious on different versions online, and you'll see between 5 and 8 verses that discuss that, of which there are several that are very clear about what true religion is. And it's about taking care of orphans and widows. And there's a number of verses a few verses that speak about that. And I think we need to keep that in mind when we say, why do we take care of people? The Good Samaritan. Go watch that and then go read that in the Gospels. What about Matthew chapter 25, the sheep and the goats, verses 31 to 46? It's about needs and meeting those needs. Now, yes, there are needs in home countries, and we do need to deal with the fact that a number of our Western countries have decided to become the international police, especially since the beginning, it's 100 years now, it's 2014, the beginning of the First World War is in 1914. And that's when the international policing began to happen. There were instances of early. If we go back to the Spanish Armada 1588, we go back to the 1500s, a number of expeditions and all that. But the real policing aspect and surveillance really happened with the beginning of the 20th century, and setting up a number of decision-making bodies for world economics and world politics. And we can't go back on that now. That's where we are. So we need to think about those that are in need, especially when there's rape, especially when there's killings, especially where there's all types of human interventions of evil on that. And it's not just catastrophes that are happening, natural catastrophes. Those happen too. And we'll talk about that in a separate video. But the fact that there are people taking care of it. Now, it should not all be around whether the oil industry, whether or not they are valid places to be going to because of other economic interests. And usually that is to have any military interventions. But to go and help and to continue to fulfill a number of these verses that speak about how we need to help others and take care of them, because that's part of true religion. I think we need to really look at that and not just say, hey, at home, our home country, we have enough needs. That's not what it's specifically about. And what I would challenge us to think about is, are we in these Western countries, and I've worked in third world countries as well, so I've worked for supported the languages and supported them for 10 years of my life, working on those languages and supporting them actually more. The Western cultures, we are not the center of the world. We are not the center of the universe. We are not the only called people of God. God wants everyone to be part of His called and His elected, and we are part of that instrument. It's not about us, it's about everyone. And God did not restrict that for any ways. So when we have the means to be able to take care of that, then we should use those. I'll do a separate video that speaks about my experience on disaster relief and talks about it a little bit more on that specific topic. But it's really important to see that it's not, it is not for us to decide if we don't send people or not. Now the question is how we do that, okay, how they go. And I'll have a separate video on that, because I think that there are a few different topics along this about short-term missionaries plus conventional missionary sending or not versus other innovative ways. So look at this video, watch those, but do not get stuck into the political we should support our country only, because that was not how the Lord has planned it out and said it biblically. Review that and read over the verses carefully before you make those kinds of statements.